Good evening. Today is December 8th of 2020, and I'd like to call to order the public hearings this evening. So we have two public hearings before us this evening. The first relates to an application received from Westcor, and the second regarding an application from Sunshine Coast Community Services. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the first hearing for Westcor, and then we're going to adjourn that public hearing and go right into the second one. So I'd like to call to order the first public hearing convened under Section 464 of the Local Government Act. The business item of this hearing is Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 25-306-2020, Westcor. Bylaw number 25-306-2020, Westcor proposes to redesignate a portion of the site known legally as Lot 12, Block E and F, District Lot 4294, Plan 20152 from R3 to R1 to facilitate a 4-lot single-family subdivision. All persons who believe that interest in their property is affected by the proposed bylaws will be afforded an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that is the subject of this hearing. If you have a written submission, please submit it to our planning department before the end of this public hearing. And the email address is planning@sechelt.ca. The file can be reviewed at the district office during normal business hours after the hearing is concluded. Notice of this virtual public hearing was advertised in the newspaper, on the district's website, and via social media. If you have signed in using the Zoom app and you wish to be added to the speakers list, please let us know by clicking the raise hand button. A staff member will then reach out to you in the chat to advise that you have been added to the speakers list. Once you've been added, staff will lower your electronic hand as confirmation. So again, raise your hand and you will be added to the speakers list. If you've dialed in with a telephone, press *9 to raise your hand and you'll be added to the list. Those calling in will only be identifiable by their phone number. So when it's your turn to speak, I will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. The name and address of persons who make written or verbal submissions will form part of the public record. When I call on you to speak, you'll be able to address the meeting. You will have to unmute your microphone when prompted. On the Zoom app, mute and unmute is selected on the lower part of the screen. If you're dialing in, the microphone is muted or unmuted by pressing *6. Please note that when staff enable you to speak in the Zoom app, there will be a brief transition period where it may appear that you've been disconnected. Please be patient. This is only a momentary glitch. You do not need to log out. When speaking, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record. In the interest of time and comfort for those in attendance, we will be restricting your comments to 5 minutes. If you wish to speak a second time, you will be given a second speaking opportunity after everyone wishing to speak regarding the proposed bylaw has spoken once. Anyone wishing to speak a second time will be limited to 3 minutes. To speak again, please raise your hand to be added to the next speakers list. This public hearing is a statutory process convened for the purpose of hearing from the public on the proposed bylaws. None of you will be discouraged or prevented from making your views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Now, please note, Westcor currently has 2 developments moving forward within the District of Sechelt. The public hearing tonight is for the 4-lot single-family subdivision, not for the multi-family proposal. Tomorrow evening, the developer is holding a public information session via Zoom on the proposed multi-family development. So this evening, we'll be restricting your remarks to the 4-lot single-family subdivision. During the public hearing, if you go off topic, as chair, I will ask you to return to appropriate subject matter or stop your presentation. Members of council may ask you questions to clarify points that may not have been clear to them. Council will not enter into a debate with anyone. The function of this hearing is for council to listen to submissions brought forward. After this public hearing, council may, without further notice or hearing, give whatever effect to the proposed bylaw it deems appropriate. The planner will now provide an overview of the bylaws. So I'll turn it over to, I believe it's Sven.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first application under consideration tonight for public hearing is the rezoning application for Westcor lands for the lower portion of Lot 12 Mills Road. This is a rezoning application to rezone just the lower portion of the lot, Lot 12, adjacent to Mills Road and south of Bly Road, from the existing zoning of R3 to the zone R1 Residential 1. And the intent of this is to facilitate a 4-lot single-family subdivision with a minimum lot size of 500 square meters. The zoning amendment bylaw number 25306/2020 consists of a site-specific amendment to rezone the property from R3 to R1. The existing R3 zone currently allows for 900 square meter minimum lot size, provided that sewer is available. The proposed R1 zone would allow for a 500 square meter minimum lot size with sewer. The proposed R1 zone is very similar in density to the surrounding single-family neighborhoods. The subdivision proposal would consist of 4 lots. Lots 2 to 4 would be accessed off Mills Road, with 1 lot being accessed off Bly Road, and statutory requirements for frontage works would be required as well. The next steps for this application would be consideration of public hearing comments tonight, followed by a 3rd reading where the applicant would meet any conditions of rezoning. This requires Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure approval due to the proximity to the controlled access highway. That would be followed by consideration of adoption and 4th reading. A development permit would be required for those lots under 600 square meters, and that would be followed by a servicing agreement and building permit. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now invite persons to provide verbal submissions regarding the bylaw amendments. And I will first call for submissions from those who've signed onto the speakers list. Before you begin your comments to council, please state your name and address for the record. So are there any speakers on our speakers list?
There are no names provided on the speakers list.
Thank you. All right, so I will ask again. We'll ask 3 times. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this bylaw? To indicate your wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand or use *9 if you're calling in from a telephone. I'll ask a 2nd time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this bylaw? All right, I'm going to say if anybody has a submission to come in, it needs to come in now before we close out this public hearing, or we can no longer receive it.
Your worship, excuse me, it's Joanne.
Yes.
I believe we are just checking the planning@sechelt.ca email address was provided.
Thank you.
And sorry, it may just take a couple minutes.
That's fine. That's fine. So if you're in our gallery and you wish to speak to this bylaw, please raise your virtual hand to be added to the speakers list, or on a cell phone, *9.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Madam Mayor. There
Yes.
are currently no emails in the planning inbox.
Thank you. All right, so for the 3rd and final time, I will ask once more, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this matter? And there are no further submissions for the public hearing. So hearing from Not having anybody indicate they want to speak, I will adjourn the public hearing and remind everyone that no further information is to come forward to council regarding this proposed bylaw. Thank you. That ends the public hearing for the Westcor Lands development. So we have quite a few in our gallery. I think the call that went out from community services had a lot of people show up tonight. So we're going to move on to our second public hearing this evening. I will now call to order a public hearing convened under section 464 of the Local Government Act. The business item of this hearing is zoning amendment bylaw number 25-304, 2020, community services. Bylaw 25-304, 2020, community services proposes to rezone the subject property known legally as Block P, District Lot 303, Plan 14919, and Lot 36, Block G, District Lot 30. Ian?
Yeah, Jennifer's going to bring them in.
Ian and Sven?
No.
Ian and Sven, can you please mute? Thank you. Let's see, District Lot 303 and 304, Plan 15854, to facilitate a 22.0 meter or 6-story mixed-use building with 34 affordable rental units and 2 floors of office use. All persons who believe that interest in their property is affected by the proposed bylaws will be afforded an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that is the subject of this hearing. If you have a written submission, please submit it to our planning department before the end of this public hearing at planning@sechelt.ca. The file can be reviewed at the district office during normal business hours after the hearing is concluded. Notice of this virtual public hearing was advertised in the newspaper, on the district's website, and via social media. If you've signed in using the Zoom app and you wish to be added to the speakers list, please let us know by clicking the raise hand button. And I've noticed somebody's already done that. That's good. A staff member will then reach out to you to advise that you've been added to the speakers list. Once you've been added, staff will lower your electronic hand as confirmation. If you've dialed in with the telephone only, press *9 to raise your hand and you will be added to the list. Those calling in will only be identifiable by their phone number. So when it is your turn to speak, I will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Those who've registered to be on the speakers list will have the opportunity to speak first in the order of the list. The name and addresses of persons who make written or verbal submissions will form part of the public record. When I call on you to speak, you'll be able to address the meeting. You will have to unmute your microphone when prompted. On the Zoom app, mute and unmute is selected on the lower part of the screen. If you're dialing in, the microphone is muted or unmuted by pressing *6. Please note that when staff enable you to speak on the Zoom app, there will be a brief transition period where it may appear that you've been disconnected. Please be patient, and this is a momentary glitch, and you do not need to log out. When speaking, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record. In the interest of time and comfort for those in attendance, we will be restricting your comments to 5 minutes. If you wish to speak a second time, you will be given a second speaking opportunity after everyone wishing to speak regarding the proposed bylaw has spoken once. Anyone wishing to speak a second time will be limited to 3 minutes. To speak again, please raise your hand to be added to the next speakers list. This public hearing is a statutory process convened for the purpose of hearing from the public on the proposed bylaws. None of you will be discouraged or prevented from making your views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. If you go off topic, as chair, I will ask you to return to appropriate subject matter or stop your presentation. Members of council may ask you questions to clarify points that may not have been clear to them. Council will not enter into a debate with anyone. The function of this hearing is for council to listen to submissions brought forward. After this public hearing, council may, without further notice or hearing, give whatever effect to the proposed bylaw it deems appropriate. The planner will now provide an overview of the bylaws, after which the applicant will speak. Over to planning.
Thank you, Mayor. The application under consideration for a public hearing tonight is for 5638 Inlet Avenue for Sunshine Coast Community Services. This rezoning application is intended to permit a 6-story or 22-meter mixed-use building consisting of 34 affordable residential units for women and women with children. The bottom 2 floors will continue to be used for community services programming space, office space, and administrative space, as well as drop-in use. There is no proposed land use change for this site-specific zoning amendment. Zoning bylaw amendment number 25304/2020, as noted, is a site-specific amendment to permit a 22-meter building or 6-story building, and this would be subject to a housing agreement that is entered into with council and registered on title of the property. In other words, no other buildings for other uses other than one subject to a housing agreement would be permitted to take advantage of the 22-meter increased height provision. There's also a site-specific parking provision proposed to reduce the number of parking spaces to facilitate the development, and that would be 1 space per 35 square meters of floor area would be reduced to 1 space per 45 square meters of floor area. In addition, we're proposing a district-wide parking provision of 1 space per affordable rental housing unit. Again, this would be subject to a housing agreement. The next steps for this application would be consideration of public hearing comments tonight, followed by 3rd reading. At this point, the applicant would need to meet any conditions of the rezoning. The Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure would be required to approve of the bylaw, and that would be followed by consideration of adoption or 4th reading, development permit, that followed by servicing agreements and building permit. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. In the question and answer portion, there's a question from Catherine Leach. She would like to confirm that she will speak with Makola. So we are going to invite the applicant to speak, and the applicant will have 10 minutes. The timer is on the screen. So we'll turn that over to staff to facilitate. Welcome.
Thank you. We're just going to share a screen.
Thank you. We can see that.
Great. All right. And is Catherine available?
Catherine has been brought in, I believe.
Great.
Yes.
All right, with Catherine in, I'll begin. So thank you, Mayor Seegers and members of council. My name is Katie Fabris, and I'm the Senior Project Manager at Makola Development Services, assisting Sunshine Coast Community Services with the development of their Building Together project. I'm here with you tonight virtually with Catherine Leach, the Executive Director of the Sunshine Coast Community Services Society, and we also have in attendance our architect, Jesse Garlick of Studio 531 for any questions. We'd like to say thank you for taking the time to allow us to present to you tonight on the proposed zoning amendment for 5638 Inlet Avenue. So the amendment proposed is critical to achieving the vision for the site. Tonight, we're requesting a site-specific amendment to the zoning bylaw to increase the height of the building to 22 meters or 6 stories at this site only. Further, we're proposing to amend the parking requirements to permit 1 stall per unit for the residential component of the building and 1 stall per 45 square meters of the non-housing space of the building. This would result in a total of 47 stalls on the site. The proposed amendment is consistent with the District of Sechelt official community plan, and the proposal supports a significant number of OCP policies, including but not limited to creating affordable housing as part of new developments to increase and protect the existing housing supply, supporting the retention and recruitment of businesses and employees by ensuring access to appropriate and affordable housing, childcare, and other community services, and allowing for additional height up to 6 stories in locations where views are not impacted and the building does not have significant overshadowing effects. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Catherine, who will speak about the project need and vision.
Thanks, Katie. For more than 45 years, community services has been an integral part of this community. Each year, we use our resources to provide support services to over 5,000 people living along the coast. We do this through 35 programs that are offered in one of our 8 facilities located in Sechelt and Gibsons. Additionally, we provide services through outreach from Port Mellon to Egmont, which enables staff to meet participants where they are, in their homes, at a location they choose, or out in the community. Our services support pregnant and new moms, families, children, youth, adults, and seniors through the provision of crisis response, support programs, housing, and advocacy. You may be more familiar with our programs through our program names. Some of those include Youth Transition House, Arrowhead Clubhouse, Bellies and Babies, Youth Outreach, the Sunshine Coast Food Bank, Police-Based Victim Services, Better at Home, and Child Care Resource and Referral. In 2016, Community Services began exploring the idea of providing affordable rental housing in response to the housing crisis on the coast, increasing the number of housing options we currently provide. We engaged with community to better understand the need and the unique role we could play in addressing this crisis. We hosted a number of community consultations and dialogues. We reviewed the data collected through those dialogues, the Hidden Homelessness Project, Census Canada, and our own data on homelessness collected through our programs. This is some of what we learned. There is no affordable 3-bedroom rental stock on the coast. There is a shortage of affordable 2-bedroom rental stock on the coast. Youth aging out of care are not able to find affordable housing. Single women with children are in need of 3-bedroom units. Existing rentals are often reported as substandard and unsafe. Women impacted by violence or at risk of homelessness are severely challenged to find affordable housing on the coast. 52% of Sunshine Coast renters spend more than 30% of their income on housing. Through our Hidden Homelessness report about women over 50 living on the Sunshine Coast, 40% of respondents reported not being safely housed. Families leaving our second stage housing program are unable to find affordable, safe, and adequate housing. After reviewing the information gathered, our organizational capacity, and our available resources, the Board of Directors decided to pursue a project that focused on developing affordable housing for women and children, housing that will be built on top of 2 floors of social support programs. While this does not address all the housing needs in our community, it does address a significant need and one that we are confident we have the experience and expertise to manage well. The development will provide 34 units of affordable housing and support programs together in one location where people can be engaged, active, and supported in a warm and welcoming environment. It will embrace a mix of women, including single women, women with children, single women who are older, and young women who are aging out of care, creating a community of women and families who have similar life experiences, such as struggles with homelessness, poverty, and experiences of violence and abuse. To accomplish this, we will build studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom apartments. By bringing the majority of community services programs located in Sechelt under one roof, we will reduce barriers to service and increase opportunities for individuals and families, particularly for those with complex challenges, to access a variety of services in one location. This model provides an additional benefit of creating efficiencies and increasing the sustainability of our organization, helping to ensure we are able to continue to support this community for many years to come. In addition to providing affordable housing for women and children, this development provides an opportunity to increase our food security programs, create spaces that support wellness and connection, and improve the safety of our neighborhood. With that in mind, we are highlighting 3 additional components of this development. Many families and children living on the coast struggle with poverty and food insecurity, impacting their health and wellness. We know that sharing food and cooking with others improves individual health and well-being, reducing anxiety and increasing feelings of belonging. This development will expand our food security work by incorporating a long planned for commercial kitchen into the building. This will build on the great work of the food bank and support all of our food programs, including our community gardens. Our outdoor space will include a wellness garden to support the health and wellness of our community. This space will build on the friendship gardens that were gifted to community services as a memorial to Kay Budd. We are honored to be able to continue Kay's dream, which was to provide a safe and beautiful place for women and children to gather. Finally, this initiative will increase safety and security of the neighborhood through thoughtful design that will increase lighting, improve the pedestrian walkway, increase organized activities, and build connections between neighbors. Our vision is a place where women of all ages, with and without children, have a safe, warm, welcoming, and inclusive space they are proud to call home. And that is connected to a neighborhood place that is inclusive and where everyone is welcome. Welcome to seek supports, welcome to volunteer, welcome to work. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Katie.
Thanks, Catherine. As demonstrated through the vision, which Catherine has spoken about, the proposed amendment in front of Council tonight allows this vision to become a reality. 6 stories is required for this project as it allows for family-sized units, which Catherine demonstrated are in desperate need. We're seeking to provide 40% of the units in this building as 2 or 3 bedroom units, as there's a significant need for affordable housing in Sechelt. Without 6 stories, there would need to be a reduction in these desperately needed family-sized units. A key site factor which drives the height of the building is the BC Hydro right-of-way, which covers approximately 80% of the site. This area cannot be built on per the terms of BC Hydro, and as such, the only option for this site is to build up. While the hydro right-of-way is a limiting factor for the location and site of the building, it does allow for ample parking area as well as outdoor space to ensure that the community outdoor values are maintained. The concept site plan demonstrated on the screen identifies the location of the building at the south end of the site within the developable area of the site, as well as significant landscaped area, bicycle storage, and ample parking. This next slide demonstrates the proposed building at different times of year to demonstrate the shadowing effect. As demonstrated, the building shadows the remaining community services property and has minimal shadowing effects on neighboring properties. Additionally, views are not impacted dramatically. Here is a view northwest from near the hospital looking at the site. As you can see by the arrow, the location of the proposed building. And here's a view looking north at Inlet and Mermaid, demonstrating how the building would be an anchoring feature at the end of Inlet Avenue. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Catherine for some final remarks.
Thanks, Katie. This development is quite possibly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for this community, an opportunity to address an urgent need with a unique and innovative solution. A solution that will provide safe, affordable, and long-term rental housing built on top of community services, creating a hub of social service supports for the whole coastal community. And with that, I am going to say thank you for listening to our presentation and pass it back to the Mayor.
Thank you. So first, Katie, I'll have you stop sharing your screen and I'll ask if any of the councillors have any questions. No hands up. Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll move you back into the gallery. So we now invite persons to provide verbal submissions regarding the bylaw amendments, and we already have people up on our speakers list. So I'll first call for those submissions from those. And before you begin your comments to council, please state your name and address for the record. And just a reminder to those in the gallery, if you want to be added to the speakers list, please raise your hand. Staff will add you to the speakers list and lower your hand. If you've phoned in, if you're dialed in with a telephone, *9 will actually get you on the speakers list. All right, so you will have 5 minutes and you can see the timer on the screen. Jesse, we will have you go first. So name and address, please.
Well, thank you. Jesse Garlick, 2556 Roseberry Avenue, Victoria, BC. I am the architect for the project, and actually simply available to answer any questions that council or the public may bring up at the meeting. So I have nothing further to say at the moment, but I'm available to answer questions. on
Thank
their
you.
behalf.
So let's see if council has any questions of you. Nothing at this point. Thank you, Jesse. We'll keep you in mind there if something comes up. So our next speaker is Nick Gaskin. Welcome, Nick.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Hello.
Nick Gaskin, 240 Harry Road, Gibsons. Before I start tonight, I would first like to start by saying that I gratefully acknowledge my location as a settler on the beautiful unceded lands of the Coast Salish nations. And I give thanks to the Squamish and Sechelt Nation for allowing me to live, work, play, and raise my family on this beautiful land. I think most of you on the screen, Council, know me from previous meetings over the years. But for those of you at the hearing who don't know me, my name is Nick Gaskin. I was previously the Programme Manager for Rain City Housing on the Sunshine Coast, and now work for the Sechelt Nation as their Health Manager. I speak to you today as a frontline worker in our community and also a dad of two wonderful young daughters, Ella and Charlotte. I could go on all night about the unaffordable the Sunshine Coast has become and the effects this has had in our communities in relation to housing. I could also speak all night about the feminisation of poverty and the effect that this has on women in our communities, especially those raising children. But in order to keep this short and to the point, I want to speak directly to the work of community services and the needs of women in our community from my perspective as a worker and a dad. Firstly, I can't speak highly enough of the need for the proposed women's housing being offered here tonight by community services, and give thanks to BC Housing for supporting this project and the district in holding this hearing. As someone who has and is working in the front lines in our community, I see and hear every day about the need for safe women's spaces. As we know, community services does a fantastic job of running support services for women in our community, but I think they will admit that even they don't have enough beds to support the need. The same goes for many other service providers out there in our communities. For years, the women, especially those with children and those fleeing violence, have been overlooked in our community. For years, we've been calling for a safe and appropriate housing for women, women with children, women who have been victims of violence. Finally, the proposal is before us that addresses this urgent need and provides safety and security for some of the most vulnerable in our communities. As someone who's worked closely with community services and their programs over the years, I can't think of a better provider for this service than Sunshine Coast Community Service Society. The way they tackle issues facing women in our community, the way they advocate for these women, and the ways in which they support them is unrivaled, in my opinion. Over the last 5 years, I've lost count of the conversations I've had with women in our community who need safe shelter and a home. Too many times I watched women return to unstable and violent relationships because they had nowhere else to go. If this program was operational, I am sure that many of those women would be living there safe now, rather than unsafe, like many find themselves in tonight. We know we need this housing for the women in our community, our mothers, our sisters, our aunties, and our daughters. And I hope the district approves this amendment to the rezoning for this development so that these women can be safe and supported. I have no doubt that community services will do an amazing job operating this housing and supporting the women who will live there, much like they've done for over 40 years on the Sunshine Coast. I send my admiration to the staff and leadership of community services. You are all unsung heroes, and I stand with you tonight in solidarity. I would also like to take a moment to talk about this as my perspective as a dad. I love my girls more than words can explain, and I'm trying to raise them to be strong women with voice and women who care about other people. I won't lie that I'm partly terrified for their future and what the world holds for them. I hope to always be around to support them, to keep them safe, but if for some reason I'm not or unable, I want to know that we have places in our community where they can go and be safe. I want my daughters and hopefully their children to know that Sunshine Coast supports women and women's rights to live independently and with safety. I want them to be proud of their community and the fact that people representing our communities stand up for them and their rights. I want to be able to drive my daughters past Inlet Avenue and tell them that's an apartment building where women live with their children with supports to live their best life. I want daughters to know that they have safety in our community. Finally, the District of Sechelt has done some fantastic jobs over the years, showing leadership, compassion, and empathy to the most vulnerable in our communities. They have made many tough calls, which I've seen firsthand have increased the quality of life for those marginalised and without supports. I really hope the district will continue to show leadership and will approve this zoning amendment so this much needed housing can become a reality for the women in our community who so desperately need it. I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I look forward to seeing this project move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Council, any questions of Nick Gaskin? No questions. Thank you. Move on to our next speaker, Stephen Forjax. Is that how you say your name?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, it's Stephen Forgas. It's Hungarian. Pronunciation's a bit different in Hungarian, but we won't go there.
Okay.
My name is Stephen Forgas. I live at 2591 Lower Road in Roberts Creek. My wife and I have a 22-year-old daughter, and we have long supported organizations and initiatives that address the roots of social problems. I feel strongly that providing women and young families with a stable foundation upon which to build their lives will help reduce social problems in our community down the road. My comments are very brief. I just want to say I hope that Council approves the amendment and will do all it can to support this initiative as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions of our speaker? No questions. We'll move on to our next speaker. Thank you, Stephen. Next speaker is Nancy Denham. While we're getting Nancy into the, so that she can speak, anybody else in the gallery who'd like to be added to the speakers list, please raise your hand on the Zoom platform. If you've dialed in, *9 will raise your hand and we can add you to the speakers list. So Nancy, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much for letting me speak here tonight. I'm speaking in support of the development. I have a great deal of respect and appreciation for the Community Services Society, and I trust their work that they have done to examine not just the social needs, but also the needs, the development and how it could fit into our town. Looking at the picture of the building, looking down the road in front of the medical center, and seeing it there at sort of looking below the mountains, it looked very much like it fit. And I know it's a big leap for our town to go from the low levels, and I know it's an exception to go 6 stories, but I think that this is sustainable for the Community Services Society, and we need them. And it is providing a need that is just, for years. We've needed this for years for women and children. And I just can't be more, I'm very thrilled and excited about, and I've watched the development of the plan, and I just want to add my personal support for it. I live in Davis Bay on 4705 Laurel Avenue, but I did live for over 10 years in the town of Sechelt, and was very involved at community services then. And I just see the future. This is a great opportunity for all of us who care about our community. And so I just want to add my voice of support. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions for our speaker? Seeing no questions. I'm going to again invite those in the gallery, if you'd like to be added to the speakers list. Oh, we have another one. Thank you. Kate Reeves. Thank you. Start by saying your name and your address, please.
Hi, yes, Kate Reeves. I live at 41408 Dryden Road in Squamish. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the project from a slightly different perspective, because I have had the experience of being of working with some of the women who have had the benefit of this a very similar concept in Squamish. Squamish has a project named Under One Roof, and I can tell you the personal benefits that are not like having this has really helped people escape from violent relationships, and has really helped youth, especially with that violence and escaping. And I really believe that this will really enhance your community. And I would just urge you to approve this amendment to the bylaw this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for our speaker? No questions. Thank you, Kate. And anybody else in our gallery who would like to speak? We see no hands up. I'm going to have staff look to the planning@sechelt.ca mailbox to see if there are any submissions that have come in during the public hearing. Again, reminder to the attendees, raise your hand from the bottom of the screen, or if you've called in with a phone, it's *9.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no submissions in the planning inbox.
Thank you. All right, so I will call 3 times for final submissions. Oh, Kate has her hand up. Let's bring Kate back in. Thank you. Kate, go ahead.
She's left the meeting, Mayor.
Oh, she's left the meeting now? Okay. Thank you. So I will call for.
I'm sorry, Mayor, my apologies. She is here.
Okay, thank you. All right, sorry, Kate, go ahead.
Sorry, my hand wasn't raised again. I'm not sure why it keeps saying I'm raised. So I am still here, but my hand is not raised. So.
Okay, so you don't want to speak to us again?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else in the gallery who would like to speak to us? Lori Pratt. Welcome, Lori. Name and address, please.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Lori Pratt, 10073 Buccaneer Road, Half Moon Bay, BC. Just wanted to speak in favor of the project. I think it's a great spot for it, and having the densification down in the Sechelt core, I think is important. It's an important project for our coast as a whole. As Catherine said in her presentation, they do provide services up and down the coast. So I just wanted, from my perspective, I think it's a fantastic project, and happy to see it moving to this stage, and hopefully we'll see it continue to move through. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for our speaker? No questions. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you very much.
All right, our next speaker is Angela Letman. While we're bringing Angela in, if you would like to speak to this bylaw before us, please raise your hand and you'll be added to the speakers list.
Yes, hello, Mayor and Council. I'd like to speak in favor of the project. I'm a volunteer with the Building Committee for Sunshine Coast Community Services, and I've written in a written response as well. I live at 4873 Laurel Avenue in Davis Bay, which is a neighborhood of the District of Sechelt. I heartily endorse the rezoning application for the Sunshine Coast Community Services for the proposed Affordable Housing and Community Services Center. BC Housing has recognized the need for affordable housing units in our community and is partnering with Sunshine Coast Community Services for their construction. The affordable housing units will help women of all ages, including widowed and single seniors on fixed incomes, young women aging out of foster care with no place to call home, and single moms with children who are struggling to make ends meet. In a discussion with Adam Major of Hollywell Properties last month, I became aware of the current extreme shortage of rental housing on the Sunshine Coast. The increased real estate sales activity and their prices, plus the proliferation of short-term rental units, is probably the root cause. This shortage was further exemplified in another recent discussion with an acquaintance of mine from Gibson's. They posted an ad this past fall for their secondary suite. They received over 75 applications for their rental. Not only is there a rental shortage on the Sunshine Coast, but the situation has driven up monthly rental rates too, thus placing those of lower income in even more precarious situations. I make reference to the Coast Reporter's article in last week's paper. And I would just like to speak to the proposed location. It's perfect. It's an easy walk to shops and services. It's 2 blocks from bus routes, the Seniors Activity Center, the Sunshine Coast Art Center too. And it's very beneficial to be located in the same building where programs are offered like Bellies and Babies, food security, family counseling, and youth outreach. With the sterilization of the majority of the site in BC Hydro's right-of-way, the only way to accommodate all of the units plus the services is to go to 6 stories, which is what the proposal is for. The second part of the amendment bylaw is for a reduction of parking. This will enable the community gardens to continue and a children's play space to be added. This should be supported by council because people of low income tend to have few or no cars, and the proximity to transit and downtown, as well as the provision of covered or interior bike storage areas and a pickup and drop-off area on Inlet Avenue, will provide for alternative transportation solutions to both residents and staff. In conclusion, I urge Sechelt's Council to consider the current and future affordable housing need in Sechelt and the Sunshine Coast and vote in favor of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions for our speaker? Seeing no hands, thank you, Angela. Any other speakers from our gallery? Please raise your hand if you'd like to be added to our speakers list. If you're dialing in from a phone, *9 will raise your hand. While we're waiting to see if somebody else would like to speak, staff, can you check the email address, the email account, to see whether or not submissions have come in to planning@sechelt.ca. By the end of this, once this public hearing has adjourned, we will not be able to receive any further information. So if you have a submission, please submit it right away. Email address is planning@sechelt.ca. And we do not have anybody else on the speakers list, so I'm going to ask 3 times. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this bylaw? If you do wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand, either through the raise hand button in Zoom or *9 on your cell phone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no submissions in the planning inbox.
Thank you. So I will call a second time. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this bylaw? And the third and final time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this bylaw? Raise your hand in Zoom or *9 on your cell phone. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I will adjourn this public hearing and remind everyone that no further information is to come forward to council regarding this proposed bylaw. Thank you very much for your attendance. This will be coming back to council as soon as staff have compiled the information. So thank you all and good night. Thank you, staff.